Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Powered by the Monroe County Reporters. Here are your hosts, Jason Harwood and Jacob Litton.
All right, welcome to another episode of Talking Grit, coming to you live on Mondays at 9 p.m. on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can also listen to us on each episode. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jason Harwood, and Jacob Litton is here as well. The draft is next week. It's coming up quickly. We have a very draft-heavy show for you here today, but first, let's check into Jacob. You gonna be able to pay attention with the Tigers kicking butt here?
I'm going to devote a little bit less than I normally do to you.
Okay. All right.
It's okay.
I don't know how you can devote less than what you normally do to me, but that's okay. That's scary.
When you talk, I'm usually watching the Tigers or Pistons or doing something else.
Okay.
Just waiting for you to stop.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
Put you on mute.
Yeah, we're doing plenty of watching Tigers and Pistons this weekend, right? We had to work together and we caught some Tiger action. It was cool.
Hey, if work was like that every day, I'd be all right with that.
Oh man, that would be a sweet deal. We could be the Jason Benetti and Andy Dirks, man.
Right.
They're so much fun to listen to, those two guys. I love it.
Yeah, no, they're perfect.
Yeah. So, anything else happened this weekend that I wasn't around for?
I spent my whole weekend with you, basically.
I know.
Other than a few hours away.
Yeah, I know.
I'm on day 4 of 7. I think I got a few more left before a long weekend.
That is a rough go going 7, but to get in the long weekend is maybe, what you're looking for. I'm sure that last day, Thursday, is going to seem like it takes forever to get through.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Thursday's also JJ's first baseball game. So I'll have that to look forward to after work too. So,
yeah. What position is JJ playing?
He usually plays shortstop.
Okay.
But he's probably going to be doing a mix shortstop, second base, middle infield somewhere.
Well, you said you were worried about the first base, so they're going to be able to pick his throws, or is he going to have good accuracy?
Our first baseman, he's been working. I'm proud of him, so we're going to see. They got to get the ball to him, but he's been doing a really good job, so.
Well, that's good. What defense has not been playing well? The Brewers, man, they were giving us so many unearned runs here.
Double play ball just flew out of his glove.
Oh my God!
The pitcher got hit twice.
Yep.
And then he threw way over through the first base.
Yeah, Kryler was just giving his bat up. He was just bunting and to move the guy over, and just threw it way away. And all of a sudden, you got guys on first and third with no outs, and Tigers are making them hurt.
Yeah.
Before we get to draft stuff, quick few things because we had Eric on last week. Well, first, Eric's slip was awesome. That was your first time meeting him, Jacob. I know you came away thoroughly impressed. Anything to add about? Yeah.
Oh, just you talked this guy up for quite some time. I was like, I don't know that he's going to be able to meet the expectations of what you laid out. No, but he definitely did. That was a great show. Great time listening to him.
Yeah.
And a pleasant change, for this podcast for me to listen to somebody interesting and insightful.
I know. Good. Yeah, I know. I'm going to tell our previous guys. I'll talk to Miko and Morgan and see what they think about that statement. I know you're talking about me, but yeah.
Nice try to twist that around.
Yeah. Having Eric on was one of my greatest highlights of us doing the podcast. It's someone that I've looked up to for a long time now. And for have the opportunity to talk Lions football with him for like over an hour was pretty sweet and pretty special for me. So, and I think a lot of people enjoyed it because the download numbers were solid and YouTube numbers were very solid. So I think that we weren't the only ones that enjoyed that interview.
Right. No, people like what he's about. You can tell that for sure.
Yep. He announced today that the Grit Index is done and they're shooting for next Monday for their series on it. So I'll get access on the Patreon, on whoever else's Patreon subscriber will, and then Pride of Detroit, you can head there and you can get whatever article he's going to write based on those numbers. So we have that to look forward to. Because we had Eric on last week, we didn't talk about a few of the things that are non-draft related. We're going to hit on them really quick. First thing that we got to talk about, Hutch running. We just saw videos of Hutch and Rodrigo running. Hutch looked much better than the first video of him running. He looked a lot more natural. He was moving side to side, not just straight forward. So that was a great sight to see.
Yes, absolutely. Very encouraging. After that first video they put out of him running, you could tell he was not fully recovered yet. It was almost worrisome. It was like, oh my God, please be careful. Don't hurt yourself anymore. Like, this one definitely looked like he was more ready to go. I did not see the Rodrigo video. I did hear reports that the rehab was going well. I did not see a video of him running though.
Okay. It was much like it was just straightforward running. He looked a lot more natural in his running than what Hutch did.
Okay.
At least like in the Hutch first video. But it was just straightforward running. No side to side, no lateral movements that they showed at least. I mean, I don't know what he's actually doing, but it was great to see him out on the field, and they were at the Lions practice facility running. So, that's good to see. In this draft, we're going to talk about edge players, but there's two that I kind of want to talk about real quick. Lions met with edge free agent DeMarcus Walker of the Bears, so they are putting their feelers out there. I don't think anything will happen before the draft, but this is like one of those things like, hey, we met with this guy. If we don't get what we need in the draft, here's one of our fallback plans.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if that was somebody we really were interested in and we liked the meeting and everything like that, if that was always the intent, we could have just signed him right there.
Mm-hmm.
This is just, keeping tabs on everybody, keeping that one in the holster, seeing what we have.
Right. And then you can move quickly if you need to after the draft. The other one is Za'Darius. He's still out on the market. He's hanging out in Detroit. Mostly because he's dating the rapper, and I'm not going to pretend to know who she is because I don't. But he is.
Do you know her name?
Is it starts with a K? Is that right? Am I right? It's Cash or something.
Cash Doll.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not.
No, I don't know. I don't know who she is either.
Okay.
Don't know anything about her. She's a rapper from Detroit.
Yeah. So it could be all the edge the Lions need that, well, I'm not getting the contract I want. I might as well just, stay in town. So whatever.
Good job, Cash Doll. Keep him around.
That's right. We can invite her on. She could talk grit with us,
Yeah.
Who knows? So, that's still an option for the Lions too, is all I'm bringing up is I don't think anything, him being in Detroit is probably all just, who he's dating, but it's good that he's around and feeling the city. He obviously feels comfortable here. It could mean that we might be able to get him at the deal the Lions want to get him at, as opposed to the deal that Za'Darius wants.
Possibly.
Yep. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think anything's going to move with him until the draft, but those edge players tend to get paid. So he's probably going to be able to find a contract, but the door has not closed totally. Anything else you want to throw on those two players?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, quickly. The next thing, let's talk about jersey number changes. This is.
Did you expect this shuffle?
No.
This was way out of left field for me. Like, I had no idea that this was coming.
Yeah, I could see the JMO going to 1 because he had talked about getting it, after Okuda left, right? He wanted to get 1.
Right.
So I knew that might be in the cards. The Jahmyr Gibbs going from 26 to 0 was
right.
That blew my mind. And all those people last year that bought, and my family's included, not me, but my kids are buying the 26 because they got the new jerseys, they got the black jerseys, the number 26, and now all of a sudden they got they're gonna have to get a new jersey if they want to match what he is on the field.
Right. And that's part of the stipulation for them to change numbers is they have to buy the stock of the jersey, right? They have to buy the something to do with the number. So yeah, it's weird for Terrion and Gibbs to be switching around like that.
Yeah. I'm wondering what happened. I know Terrion switched. You know more about that story. So why did Terrion switch?
Well, originally what he had posted, on Instagram was just a picture of him in his high school jersey, and his high school jersey was number 6. So I thought that maybe that was just it, but then it turns out what he really, had in mind was just paying tribute to his former Alabama teammate Kyrie Jackson,
Okay.
who was actually the one that was drafted. Cornerback was drafted to the Vikings, but he passed away, before he even got to play. So this is something that Terrion's doing to kind of like honor him, play for him, and everything like that. Switch his number to 6, just give him a little extra incentive every time he goes out there. So I mean, that's a really cool story too.
Yeah. So I'm wondering what instigated. Did Terrion want to change from 0 to 6 first, or did Jameer come to Terrion and said, "Hey, I really want number 0"? Because Jameer come out and said he didn't like the number 26 for whatever reason, so he didn't like that. So I'm wondering. I'm curious the timeline of all that. Like, if Gibbs said, "Hey, I'd like 0," and Terrion's like, "I don't really care about 0, but I could do this cool thing to honor someone that I know."
Well, the whole thing I think that set it off was just the one if he left. If he was number 6, he left, so number 6 is up there. So I think Terrion was probably like, "Hey, I want to do that. I want number 6." And then Gibbs is like, "Perfect, get me out of 26. I'll take 0."
Mm-hmm. Earlier mentioned JMO went from 9 to 1, so all the people that used to tape over their old Stafford jerseys and write, Williams on the back, they're gonna have to, do another switcheroo. Another player that switches, Ennis Rakestraw went from 15 to 9, and Tim Patrick went from 17 to 12, and then our new cornerback DJ Reed chose number 4, so he's gonna be number 4 on the field.
Yeah, interesting little shuffle.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's gonna be weird to see Gibbs wearing 0,
I know.
running around like that.
Yeah.
And does that make him sub-0? Is that nickname dead?
It's gonna be like all those from 0 to touchdown in like 3 seconds. Like something like that. I don't know. Someone better than me can come up with something smarter. But one thing that also we didn't talk about before, and I didn't even put it on the outline, but I want to mention right here: the uniform in the NFL owners meetings. The uniform change has changed. The uniform rules have changed. So they can wear their alternate jerseys up to 4 times? I think 4 times this season now. And it was limited like 2 or 3 before. But the big thing that I think is going to be cool is you can wear your alternate helmets with any of your jersey combinations. It does not have to be with the alternate helmets, does not have to be only with the alternate jerseys. So we could see the Honolulu blue jerseys with the Honolulu blue helmet. I, for one, want to see that.
Yeah, that would look tough. All blue helmet and everything too. Like,
yes,
it's weird to me that they had rules about the uniforms like that anyway. Who is that hurting? What is the purpose of that? Like, there's got to be one light, one dark, team in the matchup. What difference does that make?
Yeah,
I say you make it like Madden. You wear whatever socks you want, whatever pants you want, however ridiculous that you think it's going to look.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why NFL has all the rules that they have, and then in the Super Bowl, you still cannot wear your alternates. You have to wear one of your traditional jerseys for whatever reason. That's the way they want it. But I'm okay with them loosening up the rules a little bit. I think the team we might see the black jerseys more. We hit them on the 2 times last year that we were allowed to wear them. We might see it more. I know the players like the black jersey, so we might be just seeing it more just based on that.
Right.
Can you wear them on the road? I assume you could wear them on the road, but maybe not.
I don't know the official rule here, but
yeah,
I don't know why. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if the team's agreed to that. Like, if we're on the road and we're playing, the Cardinals are wearing white jerseys, why wouldn't we be able to wear the black? It's not a conflict. We're not wearing the same color scheme. So I don't know.
I think because we only had it 2 times, they chose to wear them at home last year just because.
Right, understandable.
Special to be, to be at
but
home.
Yeah,
but
if there is more
4 times,
right.
You might be able to choose Monday night game or something special like that on the road. Opening, the opening game of the season, maybe, playing the Eagles. If that were to come, that'd be tight. I'd be down with that. But yeah, so enough uniform talk. Let's get on to some draft stuff here. So Jacob, I don't know. I know your kids had baseball today, so I don't know if you saw this. I added to the outline. They announced the 17 prospects that are going to be attending the NFL draft.
Too many.
Yes, well, it is what it is. But did you happen to look over that list?
I did. A
Okay.
couple surprising names on there to
Yeah,
me.
I
You know,
wanted to tell me who your number one surprising name on this list is, and then we'll go through the players real quick. But I want
it's going to be the same as yours,
yes,
right?
exactly. Who is it?
Jalen Milrow.
Exactly.
Yeah. What
I
purpose? That's just. It's going to be like the Will Levis thing. Just the cameras are going to be on him. He's going to be the
I
only
think it's
one
gonna
left
be
in this
worse.
green room. Right. He's going to be the only one with this camera on him the entire time. And I don't know. Does the NFL know something we don't? Is somebody trying to sneak back in the first round for Jalen Milrow?
Yeah.
That's just why I was thinking. I think they should probably invite like 10 prospects every year. Just have 10. Let it be almost the consensus top 10 players so that you don't have a kid stuck in that room. Or like the worst case scenario, Will Levis is there an entire first round. He doesn't get drafted. He's got to go home.
Yeah.
It happened to Brian Branch.
Exactly.
Brian Branch, came back the second day, walked up on the stage and everything. Good for him. But, that's tough.
Yeah. I think that puts a lot of pressure. And when I saw his name on there, I was like, whoa. I mean, Jackson Dart's on there, and I mean,
Yeah.
that's I don't know if that's your other name that you were surprised to see on there. Now, Jackson Dart, I've seen mocked in the first round, but he could also go the second round too. Maybe him and Jalen will hang out, together and see who gets drafted first. But those are the two names that I saw that I was like, wow, And then the name that's left out there is Sanders isn't going to be. Shooter Sanders is not going to be at the draft. So,
Right.
which I think could be a good move because he could slip. He could also go top 3. He could be one of those guys, Aaron Rodgers-esque fall that gets into the mid-20s too. Just depends. I don't think so. I think he's going to be drafted in the top 10, but he's got the potential to fall.
I think the only way that Jalen Milrow goes first round is if the other 3 quarterbacks go in the top 10, top 12 or something.
Yeah.
Even then, I just don't see somebody being like, oh my God, we've got to move up and get him right now.
Yeah, the only thing that saves those quarterbacks is that 5th-year option. Because I mean, if he potentially is your quarterback, that does save you a ton of money.
Does anyone think he's ready to come in and start right away though?
No. I mean, he might come in on some trick stuff, or just come in on a couple series and just use his legs. But
I'm not a fan of that. You're not a fan of that either, right?
No.
What do you don't need the gimmick.
No, especially not. I mean, certainly not the Lions, but any team, NFL, that's a college thing. You bring a guy in for a couple series. I think in the NFL, that's just too hard to do.
Maybe he just likes the spotlight and likes the fact, hey, you know what? I'm going to show up in my suit. I'm going to bring my family here for the draft experience.
Yeah.
Maybe he's going into it like if it happens, it happens. If it don't, it don't. I'm okay with that. It's something, just to be here.
But like you said, the camera, regardless of what he's going into it, the camera's going to be on him. And I would think that at some point pressure is going to be, or you're just going to be like,
you're just annoyed. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You're going to be like, this is the worst, this is the worst feeling ever. But, I'll quickly just mention the guys that are going to be there. Tyler Booker, Jahai Campbell, Will Campbell, Abdul Carter, Jackson Dart, who we mentioned, Matthew Golden, Mason Graham, Michigan, Travis Hunter, Ashton Genty, William Johnson, another Michigan, Tatora McMillan, wide receiver there, Jalen Milrow, Josh Simmons, Malachi Starks, Shamir Stewart, Cam Ward, and Mikael Williams. So some of those guys are potential draft picks for the Lions. So they could be there, and we get to congratulate them. Either, players that we want, or we might trade up into the, to the low 20s to try to get one of these players. So we'll see 2 Michigan guys in there. We'll see how it goes. Those 2 guys could go top 10.
Right.
But I have a question for you. I'm going to ask you, so these guys obviously chose to go to the draft. Some people are choosing to go with their family. If you were one of these guys that had a chance to go to the draft, would you be a guy that would rather be with their family, or would you rather go out on the and experience all that in the draft?
I think that I would rather just be at home. Maybe if I knew I was like top 3 and this was going to be a huge deal, if it was like that, then maybe, bring the family along. Then you're in the green room and everything like that. Go up there, shake the commissioner's hand and all that. That's cool. But, overall, I'm not that kind of like, I don't want to go there and do all that. I'll stay at home.
Yeah, I think I would have a tough time choosing which family members I would want to be there. Now I'm imagining this is a 45-year-old guy who's got kids, but most of these
Yeah,
guys are
right.
20-year-old guys. They may or may not have kids, but if they do, they're very young kids. So I don't know. I would just have trouble telling, an uncle that was, not they couldn't come, or a grandparent, that because I'm sure you could only invite, so many people, like 8 people or so. I think I
Jason
would have.
wants to bring his aunt, his uncle, his kids, his chiropractor, his
Yeah,
psychiatrist.
all that. My high school coach, my pee wee coach, all that. Yeah, I want to bring them all. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'd rather be at home too. It's hard to put myself in those shoes of those people, but I think you and I
Right.
are both
Very
family people.
unrealistic for me to
Yeah.
put myself
Yeah.
in that situation. But yeah, definitely I'd rather be at home than anywhere else like that. So
Yeah, I know. It'd be fun. It'd be fun to just have that party, be able to do that. But I look at, like, you think what the moment Terrion had last year,
right.
being in Detroit, I mean,
That's the ultimate.
that'd be irreplaceable, like the crowd going crazy. You'd have you got a couple 100,000 people just going crazy and screaming your name. So that
And
gotta
while we're
replace
on
that.
this subject, there's no chance Green Bay puts out the kind of crowd that Detroit did.
No.
Right.
No.
It's not even going to be close. And even if the numbers look decent, it's going to be people traveling. It's not going to be the same kind of crowd.
Yeah. Ty Shelter, who writes for the Pride of Detroit, he's writer for them, put out an article that just like that we're going to be putting Green Bay to shame, and it was just a nice put down article about Green Bay, and they are estimating right now 240,000. That's what, like, the official estimate, 240,000 in
Weak.
attendance. So like a third. Uh, all the hotels are booked up in the immediate area. They're like 30 minutes out. They're never going to be
That's
able
the
to.
problem with Green. Right. That's the problem
Yes.
with Green Bay is there's not enough around.
Yeah,
There's a million things around Detroit.
I
You
know.
could have got a hotel that day.
Yes, there's a lot, and then it just the timing of everything, and then also I don't know what the weather is going to be like in Green Bay. That could largely affect it. For Detroit, we had for April, we had amazing weather
Right.
that week. I mean, you couldn't ask for much better. It did rain, like it was forecast to rain the Saturday that I went, but it never did end up raining. And that could have killed the crowd, but
Yeah.
it was very pleasant to be outside, which I mean, last week we had snow here, right?
Yeah.
April could be any sort of degree of weather, and luckily for the draft crowd in Detroit and the NFL, it was very good weather last year for that. So I don't, Green Bay's going to be similar type weather, right? I mean, they could have good weather, or they could have
Right.
freezing cold snow. It seems like.
Well, probably colder, but right.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, let's move on to the draft here. We're gonna talk Lions here. Got a few topics that we're gonna talk about with the Lions, and then at the end of this, we're gonna dip into the division and kind of look at each one of the teams. We'll go over on what picks our division rivals have and kind of what they're looking for, just to give you something to look for next Thursday when the draft starts. You know, and then Jacob and I are gonna pick players that we definitely don't want to see being picked by our division rivals. So first, let's talk about the Lions. We got 7 draft picks as of right now, barring any trades. Our first pick is, most everyone that listens to this knows, 28. We have a second round pick at number 60. A third round, that was a compensatory pick for the Aaron Glenn signing over, or him going to be a head coach over the Jets. That's the 102nd pick. We have a fourth rounder, which is pick number 130. No fifth rounder this year. We do have a sixth rounder at 196 and 2 seventh rounders, 228 and 244. So we got, Brad Holmes has 7 picks at his disposal.
Right.
We talked about with Eric last week that, we're drafting at the end of the round. Does that, decrease your enjoyment for the draft? it certainly makes it a lot more unpredictable because we don't know who's going to be available at 28. When we were number 2,
Yeah, right.
we kind of knew, and then luckily Aiden dropped right in our lap, right? So we'll see. So let's talk about this. If you were to bet right now, Jacob, would you say we're going to stay pat, we're going to trade up, or trade down? What would you bet?
I actually, based on recent the way the drafts have gone, and with us being so late in the first round, if I'm betting, I'm gonna say that we would trade up.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially with having the division rivals, which we'll talk about later, but with having, the Vikings and Green Bay and everything just a few spots in front of us, probably looking at some of the same players, we already know if Brett Holmes has a first round grade on somebody and he's falling and he's there, we're going to explore jumping up and going to grab the player that we want.
Yep.
So I think right now, if I was placing the bet, I would bet that we were trading up.
Yeah.
What about you, though?
Yeah, I would say that's much more likely to happen than trading back. However, if all of Brad Holmes' picks are, gone by the late teens, and now we're into tier 2 players, he's not gonna trade up. He's gonna take value and say, I'm either gonna stay at 28 or move back, and pick 2 of the players that I could, that I like in that secondary bucket.
Which I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with either way. I always wanted to trade back just because in my head that's where the value's at, and also I am so conditioned as a Lions fan that we had so many holes to fill that trading back so we can get as many players. We're not in that position now, so I'm more apt to trade up. However, we got all these extensions that we're gonna have to sign in the next few years. We're gonna need as much cheap talent that can start as possible so we can keep all these guys, the guys that we want to keep.
Yeah. I mean, you're right, though. If they have a first round grade on like 7 players and all of those guys are gone, why not move back in the second round again? Especially because teams that need quarterbacks or teams that are looking for those late first round picks, they're trying to get back in the first round to get that extra 5th-year option, and they're willing to give up. We'll trade you our second. We'll throw a second and a third for your first, and then we still have 7 or 8 players. Yes, some of them are going to be in the second and third round, but it's really weird having complete trust in the general manager and head coach and everything like that. But if that's the move to trade back, I know they've got their eye on several different people that, can help out the team, and I would be okay with that. It's not the sexy pick. Obviously, you want to trade up and get somebody high profile. It's going to come in and make a huge impact right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not falling that way, you can't, when you're picking 28, there's a lot of other things that have to fall into place.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I mean, last year it did fall into place for us to get Terrion.
Right.
All those offensive players, all the quarterbacks that were drafted up there, that just meant a player of his caliber fell further than traditionally you would expect. So, I don't know. If I were gonna bet, I say I'm gonna say trade up. I think any bit of trading up, but it's interesting when you look down. If we wanted to trade up into this, the 20s, like the low 20 picks, like where we got Terrion, Green Bay's 23 and 24, or Green Bay's 23 and Minnesota's 24. So you're talking in those range. So if you want to jump them, you got to get up to 22, and to get up to 22, you're gonna give up your third round pick and maybe one of those 7th rounders, or something else, maybe even that 6th rounder to get up there. So I don't know, that's a lot to give up, because we talked about this at work, right, Jacob? Like your 3rd rounder, that's like giving up an Ali McNeil, right? A potential Ali McNeil, Kirby Joseph. Those type of guys were drafted in the Derek Barnes, drafted in the 3rd round. Brad Holmes has drafted those players in the 3rd round. So I know it looks like a 3rd round pick and it's just a pick, but you're potentially turning into a really quality starter for your team eventually down the road.
But that's also why, I mean, obviously we are built to win now, and if the right guy is there that's going to help, you get one of these edge defenders. But we're going to talk about the offensive line, defensive line. But you get one of these guys, you're like, man, this dude is just exactly what we're about. Come in and help instantly, make a huge impact. Then you got to weigh your options. Then it's like, okay, well, you know what? It's probably worth losing that pick this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about trusting your convictions. And like you said, it's weird for us to have total trust in our general manager. And it was, just 2 years ago, it was tested, right? We after that draft where they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, that first day, that really tested a lot of people's resolve and Brad Holmes. And he looked like a genius the fall after the season started. And now he's looking even better. You got, Jack Campbell's turning into quite a player, and you're going to expect a big third-year jump. Brian Branch, we don't need to say any more words about him. Pro Bowl player, just going to be an all-pro player, I feel. You get Sam Laporta, and then obviously Gibbs, number 0 himself, Gibbs.
Yeah,
Just the one that everybody was mad at. When I was at Ford Field, everybody was mad at that pick. I was at the draft party. People walking up the aisle, they were just like everybody was just looking at people. Same old Lions, this and that, and
that's wild. Those are the
Brad.
same people going to be wearing 0
Oh
to
yeah,
the games.
yeah. And I could tell you that I wasn't like absolutely floored with the pick, but I was all right. I liked what that kid could bring us. I knew that he could. That Titans run. That's what I knew he could give, that 70-yard run.
Right.
I knew that was the home run ability. And yeah, he's turned into a game changer. I think every team would want Jahmyr Gibbs on their team.
Definitely. I just think it was really out of character, I guess, or what everyone had thought the Lions were going with.
Well, everyone was going by the mock drafts too.
Exactly,
like,
right.
He was 20 plus in those mock drafts. They did not expect him to do it. I mean, Brad Holmes joked the other day that they were prepared to take Gibbs at 6 because someone said, "Oh, you got taking Gibbs at 12." I think he was talking to Mike Florio, and he goes, "Well, what would you have thought if we'd have taken him at 6?" So I think had they had not had a deal in place,
They just took him then,
and they just took him there. But I think Holmes knew he could still get Gibbs at 12. And he's picking up, he ended up getting Sam Laporta out of the deal. Like,
yeah.
they picked that, eventually landed Sam Laporta. So, yeah, I trust Brad Holmes, and we'll see. I mean, you and I are going to be there together, right? We're going to be at the draft party. We might be able to do a live stream from there. We'll trying to work all that out. Hopefully we pick in the first round and we don't trade out of it, but it'll be nice to get everybody's reaction. And it's a pretty neat atmosphere. So I'm pretty excited that we get to share that together.
Yes, really looking forward to it. Hoping they make a pick so we can feel what the environment is like.
I know. It's also exciting too, because like when I was there for that, the trade came, the trade's coming, and you're like, oh my God, they're what picks are we gonna get? And it was fun just being around a lot of Lions fans, just being able to talk about that. The guy in front of me was looking at his phone, so he knew about the Deborah Witherspoon pick before.
Oh yeah,
before, like the Seahawks had taken him, and I don't think that I expected that to happen, that the Seahawks would take him. But I didn't want it to be spoiled. So he didn't spoil it. But when he said that, I was shocked. And I was like, oh, what are we going to do at 6? Because that's who I thought. Jalen Carter was still out there. And the question mark was like, are the Lions, going to pick Jalen Carter? The Lions could have surprised everybody with that. That didn't happen. But hopefully we get some fireworks at the Ford Field. It'll be fun. Let's talk about the top 30 visits, Jacob. We got a list of the top 30 players. I got notes on some of these players. Why don't you name some of the players, or we can go through the list, and if you got anything you want to mention about them, and then
there's a couple guys
stuff
that I had more information about, but I also I had that for when we go through each position later.
Okay.
But we can talk about it now and just touch on it again whenever.
Yeah.
I just want to go over, each team you get 30 visits. You can pick 30 players that you get. Historically, a lot of times these are the guys the Lions draft, or undrafted free agents that might come in. A lot of times when if you go look at the top 30 visits from last year, I think almost every draft pick was on here. So, I mean, it gives you some insight. Obviously, this is not all. There's currently 16 visits that have been announced or, news is broke, which I guess that's probably up to the players and their agents and stuff if they want to be vocal about that, right? I don't think the team is required to disclose who they
No, they
not
don't.
public.
Yeah, they don't have to disclose it, and also, there are like some of these are like unofficial visits, and they can also have some local visits. So if a player is from Michigan, they can. It doesn't have to go in their top 30 visits. So like Derek Harmon, for instance,
Yes, right.
tackle out of Oregon. He's from Detroit, so he may or that they don't have to designate. I mean, for the media, they don't have to designate whether it's an official or unofficial or local visit. The only reason we know Derek Harmon was in town, I think, is because he posted something on social media. So, like, some of the stuff is reported by an agent, some, and then like an Adam Schefter may throw it out there. Some it's reported by a player. The team may say something, but generally they're going to keep these pretty tight to the vest because, as you said, these are players that the Lions, potentially going to draft. So they're not going to want to broadcast this information.
Let's go through here.
Yep. Who's the first one you want to tap on? Tap.
I'm trying to get my screen back up here, then we're good. All right. This is in no particular order. I think the players on the bottom were the most recent ones, but before the last like 3, they're all kind of just jumbled in here. And I don't know how to pronounce all the names, so I'm just going to go on the fly here and give it my best shot. Running back Lan Larison out of UC Davis. Wide receiver Isaac Tesla out of Arkansas. Offensive lineman Gray Zabel. Edge Shamar Stewart. Edge Josiah Stewart. Edge is it Q Robinson?
Yeah.
Defensive lineman Tyleek Williams out of Ohio State. Couple linebackers on here: Chaz Chambliss out of Georgia, Ruben Hypolit out of Maryland, cornerback Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky, safety Jonas Senker, wide receiver Matthew Golden, offensive lineman Dylan Fairchild and Anthony Belton, and then, as you said, defensive tackle Derek Harmon and linebacker Jihad Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all the top 30 visits that have been leaked.
Yep.
And there are, let's see, 6, 7, 8. There's about 9 or 10 that are on like the top 100 prospect list.
Yeah, they're kind of all over the map. So one player that you just mentioned at the beginning was Lan Larison, player out of UC Davis. Never heard of him before. But I listened to Eric Schlitt's Detroit Lions breakdown. He does a whole podcast. He mentioned Lan Larison. He's a guy that's like another Sione Vaki, going to be a special teams player. And my big ears immediately perked up, and I was like, okay, I like this guy. So I immediately looked him up on Instagram and, sent a message to him, said, hey, because I'm setting up things. I'd love to interview some of these guys, but his highlight tape looked pretty cool. So I was like, okay, never heard of this guy. Now he's on my list. Are there any of these guys that you saw that that you hadn't heard before, or someone that you were excited that was on the list?
I mean, I was excited to see Derek Harmon, Jihad Campbell, Matthew Golden. These are all round 1 people on here. Shamar Stewart was big. Gray Zabel, a lot of mock drafts have him coming to us. So, like, it's cool to see the people that we may be looking at in round 1 versus you see, like you said, Lan Larison. That would be an undrafted guy that we're, coming to see. The linebackers, I think, outside of Jihad, Chaz Chambliss, Ruben Hypolit, those are both undrafted free agent ranked players. So, you can use your 30 visits however you want. You can bring in whoever you want. And I'm sure the Lions have a wide range of however, they're doing this. A few of these guys were not at the combine. They didn't get a chance to talk to them at the combine. So that's probably why they're, trying to do that now, doing their due diligence. But yeah, I mean, like I said, when you look at the top 30 visits in the past, usually like Terrion, Ennis Rakestraw, they were both, actually, I think the only one that was not a top 30 visit that we drafted last year was Manu. Yeah. Right? Did we talk about that?
I don't know if we did or not, or if Eric.
I can't remember if we did, but yeah. I think Manu was the only one that was not. You know what? Eric said that he was not on like the grit index, I think, just because they didn't know anything about him. But I think
came in
he
late,
didn't.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he had a visit, but everyone else that we drafted did.
Yeah.
And you see some undrafted names that, quickly join the team right after the draft. And it's, probably the Land Larisons and the Chaz Chambliss,
Yeah, you're getting medical information on those guys, and also just for undrafted free agent. I mean, that's a free agent. Those players could sign with whoever they want. So if you could make a good impression, those guys are going to want to sign. And even if those guys don't make the team, they know. If you look at the Lions' past history, if a guy makes a practice squad or the vet squad, they're very likely to get some playing time during the year, just due to injuries and stuff like that. So we are at a point where some of these guys are just going to want to play for Detroit. Get a chance to play under Dan Campbell. Everyone mentions that they want to play for that man. So be it. That's going to be good. I've looked through some of these players. I went through because I went through the Beast, which is Dane Brugler's thing on the Athletic, and
which is
he had
amazing. If anyone hasn't seen that, that's oh man.
There's just
that's where I got the top 100 ranking that I put on here too.
Right. Yeah, I saw that and I was loving that. So I went through. I mean, especially for like these top 100, the write up is just amazing. Background of the player, they have this whole chart of strengths and weaknesses, just all sorts of stuff. So I went through the chart just to see went through all these players just to see what's if anything was that stuck out to me. And there's a few things here, like Chaz Chambliss, undrafted free agent. It's like his chase speed stands out. He doesn't miss tackles, and his teammates say he's the toughest guy on the team. Grit index point, right? One thing Matthew Golden, who I am interested in, and I think the Lions should be interested in, but I saw one of the quotes was NFL scout said, "I won't kill him for it, but I need to see more grit out of him when he isn't targeted." And I thought, ooh, that's a strike against
that's
the grit
right.
index. Yeah, you want to be able to see some of that stuff. One other thing that I think on these guys, Gray Zabel, I will say, he's been mocked to the Lions. I will say in the first round, Brad Holmes tends to go from guys from bigger schools. I mean, I don't know how the opportunity of drafting from smaller schools are. Generally, the bigger schools are going to have more first round draft picks. So I was wondering, like, would he go with North Dakota State in the first round? It's hard to predict how those guys are going to do against NFL talent when they haven't played, real good college talent.
Absolutely. And I think that Gray Zabel only started for the 1 year, right? Do you have that in front of you?
I'm not sure if he started that. I don't know. I don't have his start stats.
I believe I read that he only started for the 1 full year, and it's for North Dakota State. Let's see.
Right.
Oh no, I lied. 3-year starter.
Okay. You're a liar. You're a liar, Jacob.
No. I fact checked myself right away.
God, you got I should have a buzzer and be like,
there's an edge rusher, I think, that only got minimal starts in. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, but
yeah, looking at these names, I'm pretty excited. Shamar Stewart, I'm happy to see. Derek Harmon, J.I. Campbell, those are guys I want to see on this list that the Lions are interested in. Although, can you imagine us drafting another linebacker? How crazy would everybody go if we draft another linebacker in the first round?
Hey, we're gonna go break down position groups. I was going to talk about that.
Yep, that's good. So any of these other top 30 visits that you want to hit on, or are we good to move on?
No, we're good. We can move to the positions.
All right, let's move the position groups. Well, which group you want to start with first?
I think first we need to start with the lineman because that's the most obvious.
Okay.
Position of need, the most obvious thing that we're going to be talking about.
Yep.
So we'll just start on the offensive side of the ball. We already talked about Gray Zabel. Mm-hmm. There's a couple other offensive linemen out there that keep getting mocked around and stuff like that. But when you're looking at this top 30 list, the only one that is projected round 1 and 2 is Gray Zabel. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's because they're figuring out that, Will Campbell and some of those other guys just aren't going to be there by 28? Do you think that's something where it's like, let's not waste anyone's time by trying to meet with anybody that's going to be gone?
Yeah, I think Will Campbell's. I mean, unless you're giving up your whole draft, or giving up, future assets, you're not going to be able to get him. I think the short arm thing is gonna. I don't think it's gonna push him into a range that the Lions are gonna be able to get up there.
Right.
Gray Zabel is nice because of his versatility, right? He's played tackle, but he's mostly gonna in the NFL. It looks like guard, and then he also has, he plays center. So, you're looking not now, but in a few years, it'd be nice to have that versatility. Or, if Graham's days are numbered with the Lions, it'd be nice to have that versatility of guard center. If Frank goes down, you got someone that can come in there and play. So that's kind of where I like Gray, but the small school stuff does worry me a little bit. I've read some stuff. I'm not totally sold on him, but if Brad drafts him, then I'm all about it.
Right. But I mean, then there's these other guys out there too. Tyler Booker, we talked about with Eric. He was the one that said probably the highest crit index they've ever seen. Kelvin Banks, so he's out of Texas, and somebody else. Originally in mock drafts, he was going as high as like number 10. I think maybe even higher than that. And now suddenly we see him looking first, second round range. Is there an offensive lineman that you, other than the ones we've mentioned?
I like the Ohio State guys, Josh Simmons and Donovan Jackson. I think those two guys are potential picks for us. I am not a guy that's going to know who a good 4th, 5th round or 6th round pick is going to be in the offensive line. The draft is not my wheelhouse in that range. However, from what I've seen from Donovan Jackson, Josh Simmons, what I've heard about them, what Eric has said, what I've read in the Beast, those are guys that I think that could come in. And if they're not going to start right away, they definitely could start at some point this season if we find that Graham's not, going to be doing it, or Mahogany, takes a step back.
Right. That would be the knock on Simmons, though, because Simmons is the one that was pretty much only played outside. So you don't know if he's going to be able to play inside. Donovan Jackson can play inside, but I think most people are thinking him maybe 2nd, 3rd round prospect. So, but that's also one of the, we were just talking about. Maybe you've got a couple of these 1st round grades, you end up missing on that guy, and then you're looking, okay, you know what? I am going to look at Donovan Jackson here with my 2nd round pick, or but obviously, offensive line, we've got to add an offensive lineman, at least one.
I would
probably
think so.
multiple.
Yeah, we need to keep being cheap on that line. I mean, you could. I don't know. I haven't looked at too much of the tackle prospects, but that's even a possibility because Taylor Decker's cap hit is going to be pretty high. And at some point, you could see he could be a cap casualty. It won't be this year, but in the future, I could see it in 2 seasons, especially if Manu is, if they think that if he's made a huge jump or whatever, you could see something like that happening. Or we draft someone with some tackle versatility. And if he's good enough to take over, you could see them, hey, you know what? It's worth probably saving $10 million on this line because we could put that towards, a Brian Branch deal or whatever we want to do down the line.
Well, and we mentioned the meeting top 30 visit with Anthony Belton, so he's offensive tackle out of North Carolina State, and he's somebody that they're projecting around like 3rd roundish, but he's a top 100 player. So I mean, there's options. Obviously, there's gonna be somebody that we're drafting in 3rd, 4th round that's gonna surprise some people, I'm sure.
Yeah, we could go offensive line in the 1st round. We could also go. I think the guys that you're looking at is offensive line, defensive line, and I think the other one is wide receiver. I think in the first 3 rounds, I wouldn't be surprised with one of each if we don't double down. I don't know what your feeling on that is, but that's where I think that we're going to go. So you want to jump to defensive line next?
Yeah, let's look over the other side of the ball. So defensive line.
Did you break it down to edge, or did you just have a defensive line straight up?
I mean, I kind of just for the breakdown just put defensive line, but obviously I think edge we're looking at more importantly than defensive tackle. But there are quite a few defensive tackle prospects, like we just talked about, the Derek Harmon that, if they're there, we don't know, how long Aleem's going to be out for and everything like that. It's not out of the question to take a defensive tackle in the first round.
Well, I would argue that we have a need for it. Maybe not this season, but you only signed Lopez for 1 year. DJ Reader's 1 year. You're, you're gonna need someone. You're gonna need someone in there, and then Aleem's not gonna be available for at least the first month, if not 2 months of the season. The Lions can take they're they're not gonna push him back super fast unless we're struggling during the season and we absolutely need him back. But we have so much defensive line help that I just don't see that happening. The Lions, this regime does not rush injured players back. They take it pretty slow. But defensive tackle is, I would characterize as a need, and the way that Brad Holmes drafts is not just for this year; it's for the future of this team, and we need some defensive line help.
It's also one of those things, though. Like, do you do that first round?
Mm-hmm.
I think that you look at the board this year, and they have positions of need. We need, let's say, they're saying we need one receiver, we need an edge, we need defensive tackle, we want offensive line. Maybe they say 2 offensive linemen. We say 7 picks, but I'm sure these are the positions that they're wanting, and those are the positions they're going to get. And they've got their list, and maybe they've got a round 1 grade on Mason Graham, Derek Harmon, and Kenneth Grant. Maybe those 3 guys they're going to want round 1 grade on. Well, if none of those guys are there, and you don't have a round 1 grade on anyone else, then you fall back, and then you're looking Darius Alexander out of Toledo. There's another Ohio State guy. Ty Hamilton out of Ohio State. There's defensive tackle prospects all over the board, as there are with every position. But I'm just saying, they're gonna be prepared for whatever, and because of the way our team is set up, we don't have to pull the trigger on anybody. Like you said with the receiver thing, if there's a receiver that we really like and he's there and that's who they want, take him. We don't. There's no pressure. That's like, what yeah, we like this guy, but we really can't afford to take a receiver right now. Like, no, that's not the case anymore.
Yep.
Right? I mean, you agree with that thought?
Oh,
Like,
100%. I mean,
right.
I think it, like the way I would draft if I were, I look at it like I do in fantasy football or any of the fantasy drafts I do. I have guys broken down into tiers. And the
Don't
last
tell
thing,
everybody that because you suck in fantasy football.
oh yeah, thank you. I like, you want to, if you could get a guy at the bottom of a tier, that's good. But if you're drafting, you don't want to be drafting at the top of the tier with all these equal people. You'd rather fall back and get multiple people from that tier as opposed to someone at the top of a second tier. You'd rather get someone from bottom of the first tier. And I think that's how Brad Holmes looks at when he trades and looks at trade values and all that stuff. And I like that we don't have to draft for need. I mean, I think that there's a need based aspect of this. We're not going to draft a quarterback in the first round, for instance. I mean, even if they have, a high grade on someone, they just won't do that. But, if you have 3 or 4 positions that you're saying, all right, this is where we're at, and you're going to draft someone that's in the best tier of those positions that you need. So if that, Matthew Golden's rated high in their board, and they might have a couple second tier defensive linemen, they're going to take Matthew Golden if they have the first round grade on him and they got second round grades on everybody else.
Absolutely. Well, you kind of like we're just talking about it, but let's say what position, if you could pick one position outside of quarterback, would shock you the most if we went first round? Because I think we're both probably in the same agreement that there's not a position that would shock us later in the draft. Talking 6th, 7th round, any position on the football field, outside of maybe drafting a kicker. But but round 1, obviously we're not going to go quarterback. What else do you think would be a huge surprise?
I think, running back would be my number one. Like, oh my God, in the first round. I definitely think they're going to draft a running back maybe later in the draft. Definitely some undrafted free agents. But a running back in the first round would blow my mind. I'd be like, what are we doing?
Reliving the Jahmyr Gibbs night.
Yeah, well, I think we got a lot of tread on the tire with Dave Montgomery. Now next, maybe they if they find someone that plays Dave Montgomery's game and they're drafting ahead, I could, whatever. But I just don't. I now that being said, if Ashton Jetty somehow fell to number 28, yes, I fall over backwards and I take him. It's not going to happen because he's the type of guy that I'd want on this team. He's David Montgomery, a younger version of David Montgomery, I think.
If he falls at 28, something's terribly wrong with him anyway. But
Exactly.
no, if he was available, nope.
That'd be the only type of player that I wouldn't be like, oh my god, what are we doing? But I don't see any other taking a running back in the first round. What
I'd be picking up the phone and trading that pick for whatever I can for somebody else that wants to come get him.
Yeah.
No, but I don't think running back. I also don't think tight end.
Yeah.
I could see us drafting a tight end later in the draft, but despite because there are a couple tight ends with some high draft grades on them, but I think even if someone is there, I don't think they go tight end in round 1.
Yeah,
and this could be something where if it happens, we replay this and you can make fun of me, but I just with the tight end room that we have with Laporte and everything like that, I just think that would be a waste. To get another tight end like that. Now, maybe 2, maybe 3. Maybe you draft a tight end a little bit later, but round 1. Just seems like we wouldn't go tight end or running back there.
Yeah, I think cornerback is probably going to be a stretch too, but there are a couple of corners I like. I think I mentioned Barron before. He's up there.
That's the thing. There's a couple corners that if they're there and, then maybe they're in the position like, wow, this is kind of hard to pass up.
Yeah. And first round safety may be a little bit of a surprise. The only reason that I wouldn't want a first round safety is that might mean that we're not, the stuff with Kirby's not going well. You know what I mean?
Right. We wouldn't want anything to throw a wrench in that.
No. You could potentially draft a safety if he could start at nickel, right? Because we got a Meek sign this year. Who knows what we're going to do with Rakestraw? Is he going to be nickel? It doesn't look like outside corner. We got DJ Reed for at least 2 years. Really, essentially, it's a 2-year deal with DJ Reed. So, you got him for 2 years. If you're going to draft a young safety, which I could see them doing, but if it's in the first round, he better be able to play nickel. You'd be able to have him play up there because
there's a couple high-profile safeties, but I think that would be kind of I don't know. It would feel like a letdown. Obviously, no matter if we get whoever we get, I'm going to be excited for. I'm going to be all for it. But that would be something where, obviously you're thinking about Kirby, you're thinking about Branch, like, now there's kind of pressure. We've got this 3-headed monster. Where do we put everybody? Who's going to be the one moving around? And it raises more questions.
We have a need for safety.
Yes. Round 1 is what's the question there?
Is the thing, right? Is like putting that resource where we have some needs elsewhere. So, but is there any other position groups that you want to talk about? Did you want to talk about wide receivers or anything?
I just want to real quick, we can maybe touch on wide receiver a little more, but I want to real quick just go down through and see, we'll just name the position and then say if you think yes or no if we draft somebody out of there. If you've got somebody in mind or whatever, but this is for the whole draft. So this isn't round 1 anymore. This is like the whole draft. Do you say yes or no if we're going to draft somebody in that position group?
All right.
And then if you got notes or if you got somebody specific that you're looking on or whatever, we can talk about that. But
okay.
All right. So first, we're just going to start from the top. Quarterback. Do you say we're going to draft a quarterback?
I don't think so. We might get an undrafted free agent. With us doing Kyle Allen, Hendon Hooker, we have Jake Fromm, which I'm not too worried about him, but I just don't see us spending a resource this year in our draft of our 7 picks on a quarterback. How about you?
Agreed. Exactly the same. Goff, Hooker, Allen, Fromm. We got 4 right now. Undrafted free agent is absolutely going to happen. I would think, they are going to bring at least 1 in here in training camp, but I don't think we draft a quarterback this year.
Mm-hmm. All right. Running back. Going to draft one?
Well, so here's my situation with this. I've only seen 1 running back in any of our, visits, outside the local visits, but I've only seen 1 running back pop up in there, Larison. We've got Sonic and Knuckles on the team already. We re-signed Craig Reynolds. We've got Vaki. I don't think we're drafting a running back. I think we're going to do the undrafted thing here. I would say no, we're not going to draft a running back. But I think you said earlier you feel like we're going to.
I think we got room to draft one, and I could also whatever running back that we get, he better be a very good special teamer. That's just the way it is. Because Craig's only signed for this year. I don't know, if they're going to bring him back. Who knows what Vaki has done? But I mean, our depth really, we don't have a lot of depth there. So I could see them drafting someone, and maybe it's a Vaki clone where, yeah, he's a running back, but he's here for special teams. But we're going to have him work with our running backs coach and try to get better. So I don't think it'll be a high pick, but I could see it going in the 6th or 7th round, or undrafted free agent. But I think those 2 7th rounders, one of those could be a running back.
I feel like if we are going to add a running back, it's going to be a finesse guy, though.
You think so?
Like how you said, you think special teams, Reynolds and Vaki are both good special teamers. Are strong, closer to Montgomery than they are Gibbs. And I feel like if you're looking for a depth piece like that, then you probably do need somebody with speed, somebody that's going to, be a little bit more similar to Gibbs. I definitely think that's going to be another undrafted position where we get, a couple guys in here to compete. But I don't see us drafting somebody when we have limited draft picks. We've got other spots that we need.
All right. Wide receiver. I think this is pretty obvious.
I think we're going to draft a receiver, right? I mean, you got the unknowns about Jameson Williams' contract and everything like that. The depth of the receiver room is not very good. So, but this is also one of those ones, kind of what we were saying before, is I wouldn't be surprised if we took a receiver in any round. Yeah. Round 1, I can't say I would be all that surprised, and you can go all the way down to 7th, plus the undrafted guys we're going to get. Yeah, we definitely need more receiver help. So
what type of wide receiver you thinking? If you were going to draft a wide receiver, are you drafting an X? Are we drafting someone in the JMO mold? Are we thinking, hey, we need a Khalif Raymond replacement because this is Khalif's last year in his deal? So are you looking for a specific type of wide receiver, or are you thinking, just
in my head, I would be thinking that it would be like a X position, but
for Tim Patrick, okay,
right. But the only meeting or the only visit that we had, I think, with Matthew Golden, and Matthew Golden is not that type of player. He's, I don't think he's even 6 foot tall. So I don't know. I definitely think we're going to be adding more receiver help, but maybe they don't care as much where that's going to slot in.
You know what I want to see from our wide receiver? I want a guy like a Golden Tate, a yards after catch machine. We don't really have necessarily one of those guys. I mean, JMO does it. I mean, JMO can just blow past everybody, but he isn't a guy that's, going to the middle of the field. He's running to the outside and just blowing past everybody. I'm thinking of like a Golden Tate, the guy that can get an extra 5-6 yards after contact or just avoiding contact. I mean, I would say Amon-Ra can get yards after catch, but his is just because of his route running and just being in a great position. Whereas I think I picture Golden Tate just a little differently. I loved what he was able to provide to the Lions. So I would like to see that with this offense. Just Jared Goff could throw a guy open too. He's got incredible accuracy. I'd like to see a guy that can, get some yards. And that would be a Khalif Raymond type guy. Maybe he can also return kicks too. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. I also like if we got a good X receiver, it'd be nice to get Young there. Or JMO, I this could be our last season with JMO.
Right.
To be honest with you.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think we're going to be trading him this year, mostly because of a value type situation. He's only proven to be in this league to have one good year. He does that again. I know that we can have him. We got him for $15 million for his 5th year option, but I could also see Brad Holmes going, we're not going to be able to resign this guy. Someone's going to offer me a 1st rounder for a JMO. They might be able to take that and, just get cheap at the position.
Tough.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this name out there again just because you just mentioned it. And he actually, part of his strengths was that he is a yard after catch weapon. And that's one of the visits we had with Isaac Tesla.
Oh, yeah.
So receiver out of Arkansas, he's 6'4", 214. Yeah. potentially be yard after catch weapon. So hey, maybe this is somebody we're looking at projected. I think like 5th or 6th round or something like that. So I mean, maybe we get him late, get him undrafted or something like that. But
Yeah, and the Beast says that he's upside on special teams too. So
yeah,
he's,
that's
if you're
huge.
drafting late, right? That like if you're a Brad Holmes pick in the late rounds and you're not like a lineman, you better be good on special teams, because that's how they're going to get you on the field. I mean, the Lions look for value with those type of players. Special teams is just they look at that as a just as important as offense or defense. And so if you and that's how you can maximize your roster spots. If you can use those guys on special teams, but then say an injury happens in game and then you have to put them in at wide receiver, that then you can get those guys prepared to play that way. But yeah, um, I there's a lot of different ways we could go with wide receiver, and I'd be pretty happy with any of those ways. But for me, just in my head, Khalif's last year, I'd like to get a guy that can um, kind of do what Khalif does.
Fair enough.
All right, tight end, we already talked about a little bit. You think we're going to draft one?
I mean, I don't feel like we're going to draft a tight end. I can't say I would be surprised if we did draft a tight end late, but I feel like this is more of an undrafted free agent spot as well.
Yeah, I agree. I could see us drafting one next year. You got Brock going into the
Right,
last
right.
year deal. Laporta is going to be, we can extend him if we want, but also we're going to have to choose who we extend and not. So I could see tight end going. I mean, you could also argue, oh well, Brad sees this writing on the wall, so he's got a late round tight end that he wants to stash, to replace one of those guys. I could see him doing it, but with only 7 picks, I'd be, um, yeah, I don't think that that's going to happen. Offensive line, yes, that's going to happen, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Defensive line, yes, definitely going to
Yes.
happen.
Maybe
The next,
multiple of both of those.
exactly, we might double down on one of those positions. Linebacker, this is an interesting one.
I feel like we are going to draft a linebacker here. You know, obviously Jack Campbell playing well. Alex Anzalone's back. Rodrigo and Barnes both coming off of injuries. We signed Grant Stewart. So, I mean, we do have some linebackers in there. So, there's no pressing need to get one in the first round. But if you like somebody, then
The
I don't
thing
think
is,
it's out of the question to get a linebacker in here.
as Alex's last year, and so you could be looking at, okay, they've had so hard to replace to find what Derek Barnes can do, but maybe they find a linebacker that can do that in this draft. I could see them drafting that, and then they move Derek Barnes back to the will. You could have
Okay.
something like that. That could happen. I don't know, but Brad Holmes. Every time we do a draft, it's looking forward, and us Alex's last year. I don't know. I also wouldn't be surprised if we re-sign Alex and that becomes a moot point. So I don't know about that.
Right.
Cornerback cornerback. I'm kind of iffy on that. I could see them drafting someone, but it could also be a later round where he's a special teams player and we're gonna develop him.
Definitely. I mean, we already have a pretty young cornerback room. So I would be leaning more towards not taking somebody this year. I think the draft capital is better spent on some other things. But as always, with the right guys there, they definitely would take him.
Definitely late. I'd be surprised if it's 1, 2, or 3, unless the right guy falls in the first round and there's just so much value there. I could see them doing it. But and then safety for sure. I think that they're going to draft a safety some point in this draft. We need depth on that area. I think he's going to have to be able. He's probably going to be a special teams player, but he's also, if he could play nickel, that'd be a bonus too.
And this is Jonas Sanker, one of the top 30 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Top 100 prospect, third round rating, team captain, former quarterback, led the team in tackles last year, and also played special teams full time.
Yep. I
So
like
that's
him.
exactly
And
the kind
then
of guy we'd be looking for.
Starks is a first rounder, and
Right.
I think he's another guy that's going to be on the radar. If everyone else is off the board and we're stuck picking at 28, the right deals out there, Starks is there.
That's
can
what we've been
happen.
talking about. Yeah, one of those guys we have a first round grade. Doesn't matter what position he's in.
Yeah.
Outside of running back or tight end, in my opinion. But yeah,
Dan will get the right guys on the field that need to play. And, Brad Holmes has said before in previous drafts that, when they drafted Aaron Donald, they didn't have like a super need at that position. They were all pretty deep, but he was the right guy. And Brad Holmes is going to draft football players. So,
mission accomplished.
yep. All right. And we're not drafting a kicker or punter, so we can move on. Because we wanted to talk about we're already an hour in, so we still wanted to talk about the enemy intel. So
We can go over the enemy stuff really quick, though.
yeah, okay. So quickly for that, we both listed what are your top 3 players that you're hoping that we draft in round 1. Do you got your list?
Yeah, let's see if we match any of them. I didn't put any information about them in here, but
okay.
All 3 of the guys that I wanted or I listed on here are all edge defenders.
Okay. Wow. You're heavy on edge. All right.
I put Mike Green out of Marshall, Michael Williams out of Georgia, Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M.
Okay. Those are
the 3. Any of those guys would be home runs for me as of right now.
Yeah. I want Kenneth Grant out of Michigan if he could fall. I kind of like Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. I'm kind of interested in that. I know. I don't know Ohio State guy, but it is what it is.
We forgave J-Mo for it, so.
And Shamar Stewart was we matched on that. An edge defender, amazing athletic skills. He's only a 1-year starter, so the Lions are gonna have to project him on that. And he is like one of those guys that it's kind of like a Hutch, where his pressure numbers are insane. He's very disruptive, but he didn't show it too much on the sacks. Hopefully, playing opposite of Hutch, that could just solve anybody's worries right there about getting sacked. So I'm just like everybody else. I do like the idea of having a young edge on the other side, a cheap edge on the other side of Hutch. But I also want us to be stout up the middle and stop the run and have those type of players. So Kenneth Grant is really high on my list because I think that he can be that player that we need. Lions are always going to want to stop the run, and he definitely could do that. Yeah,
definitely. Is there anybody that you've seen mock to us or anything that you're like, man, I would be disappointed if we got this guy? Is there anyone you're like, I just do not want to touch him, or anyone with character issues, or just somebody that you just personally don't care for?
Not really. I don't really have. I mean, mine will more be positional. Like if we draft a safety in the first round, I'm gonna be worried about what that means for Kirby because I really like Kirby. So I'm more worried about not necessarily the player. I just trust Brad Holmes so much that whoever we get, I know that he's going to be a player. And maybe in this first year, he doesn't see the field as much as we would expect a first rounder to hit. But year 2, year 3, he's becoming a player that you're like, how would we be without this player on our field right now?
Right.
How about you? You got anybody in your mind that you just?
I don't want anybody with the character concerns and like the James Pierce stuff that we had talked about before. Somebody that I had my eye on, and then dig a little deeper here. It's like, okay, well, that's why he went from being mocked as the number 1 overall to now he's fallen into the second round.
Yeah.
We just don't need anybody like that, and I'm not worried about them drafting anybody like that. They're not going to, but that would be disappointing. And also the Michigan fan in me does not want an Ohio State guy in the first round, but I'll get over that really quickly. I don't care for Jack Sawyer though, and he's kind of fallen back, but a lot of the mocks had him, going late first round, especially to us. It's my completely unbiased opinion that I just am not impressed by him.
You just mad about the flag, man.
No, honestly, that that was a really bad look for him, and he'll have to sit with that, and we'll see that probably every year leading up. We'll definitely see plenty of highlights before the game of it next year, but I just not just one of those guys just doesn't ever. There's definitely been Ohio State players that's like, okay, Ezekiel Elliott. As soon as he went to the NFL, it's like, okay, I can be a fan of Zeke now. He's not in Ohio State anymore. I just has never been overly impressed by Jack Sawyer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm over it now, so it doesn't matter. Michigan won, so I don't have to be salty about it at all. So I can.
I mean, I like the idea of Michigan and Hutchinson on one side, and then Ohio State and Sawyer on the other, like a Big Ten edge tandem.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't have confidence in Jack Sawyer. So,
Yeah, I don't think.
but
it'd be a
if they
first-round
draft
target,
but if they draft him in the second round, or if he ends up a Lion, he will have my total support.
yeah, I know. When we were getting autographs for the boys and Taylor Decker come up, he's got that big Ohio State tattoo on his shoulder. But then Graham Glasgow came right behind him and made up for it. Go Bears.
Right.
All right, let's quickly touch on what we're calling enemy intel: the Bears, the Packers, and the Vikings. So we'll go over the Bears. We'll go over the Bears first. They are the first ones to pick on their division opponents. They have the number 10 overall pick. They have number 10, 39, 41, 72, 148, 233, and 240. So they have 4 top 100 picks. So they could really do some damage in this draft. And then they also signed quite a few free agents. So their GM Ryan Poles said, their draft board's open. They can draft whoever they want. I went through some of the so draft IQ. Like if you go to NFL.com, they have like this AI, and it's like compared all where everybody that's mocked. It's like compiled all this stuff. So they've compiled a list of targets, and so I'm just going to lift them really quick. Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, Ashton Genty, William Campbell, Tyler Warren, Amam Membu, Mikael Williams, and Josh Simmons were all the draft IQ targets for the first round pick for the Bears. So I'm going to ask you, Jacob, who would you not want them to get? Is there a player that you do not want them to get?
Those first 4 I think you listed are probably not going to be there at 10. I mean, that would suck if Abdul Carter went to the Bears. Or Mason Graham. I don't want any of the Michigan players to go to our rival teams anymore. So that would suck. But, I could see them possibly getting Mikael Williams, and that's somebody that I had my eye on. So that would be unfortunate.
I do not. If Ashton Genty, he could be at number 10. You could see Ashton Genty at 10.
He could, yeah.
And
but
I do not want him. He's so tough to tackle, and I just don't want to add him to that offense. I hope that they don't draft him.
That's somebody else that I'm not 100% sold on.
No.
Obviously he put up the numbers, so you can't argue with that.
His just contact and his ability to stay up. It may change in the NFL, but that's what I don't like is that his ability to bounce off and he has incredible balance. And that's what I like. That's why it reminds me of David Montgomery. He's a guy that you hit and he just stays up and keeps going. And I just don't want those guys are just, you got to be ready to tackle those type of guys. And I don't like those guys that can get an extra few yards. And, if they reshape that line and get Ashton Genty behind it, and then obviously Caleb Williams and stuff like that, you got Ben Johnson at the helm. I just don't I don't want to give Ben Johnson any more offensive weapons.
Right. Valid point.
And then Will Campbell was another one. I didn't want to see him because he could certainly be there at 10. And I was like, I don't want to throw up that offensive line anymore.
I could see them drafting Memba out of Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
I think he probably fits that team and would be there.
Yeah.
But with how many people they've signed on the offensive line, do we think that's where they're going to go with pick 10?
I don't know. We'll see what Ben Johnson, and I'm sure he's seeing what the Lions did, shore up the lines. And if they have
they've kind of done that though. So
they have.
Right.
But, staying young and cheap on that line too probably helps. Let's move on to Green Bay here real quickly. They have picks 23, 54, 87, 124, 159, 198, 237, and 250. Their draft IQ targets are, I don't know how they picked this, but Will Johnson, quarterback out of Michigan. I don't think there's any way he makes it to 23.
Right.
But Kenneth Grant, is on there. Jade Barron, the cornerback that I like out of Texas. Donovan Ezaraku, he's the edge out of Boston, who I've seen mocked to the Lions. I think
Yes.
Eric Schlitt picked him in the mock draft for Pride of Detroit recently. Derek Harmon, Mike Green, and then James Pierce. They can have James Pierce, right? You can go there and he can tear them down from the inside.
It would probably be like the Jalen Carter thing. They'd get James Pearson, all of a sudden he, just goes on a tear.
Yeah. So, is there any of those players or any player in general that you don't want the Packers to get?
My thing about the Packers and Vikings is just I still stand beside what I said. I don't want them to draft Michigan players because I don't,
Okay.
I want the best for them and I don't want to have to root against them there. That's just a personal thing. But the only, I guess, problem that I would have is if there's somebody, you know how the draft goes, especially when it's going on. When we get to like pick 23, let's say that Mike Green is still on the board. I'm like, oh God, please fall. Or, just Jade Barron or, Azaraku, like you just said, who's been mocked. So if all those guys are there, you're like, oh man, don't take one of them. Let somebody fall. Let them fall. Don't go, that's where I'm at there. There's not
Mhm.
any like one person in particular that I think would like be, such a huge help to their team that would be devastating for us.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Where they're picking 23 and 24. I just don't want them to pick the guy that I don't want to pick Kenneth Grant because that's who I kind of
Yeah, right,
want
right.
in the first round. I just don't want them to get. We're so
They'd
you're
have
in.
Kenneth Grant and Rashawn Gary.
Yeah, no, I just you're right. You're gonna have to hate those guys. I just don't want them to get one of my targets, and
Right, absolutely.
know,
That's the thing that sucks about them picking right here. Packers 23, Vikings 24.
right. And if we want to move up ahead of them, then we're giving up a lot of stuff. Now the Vikings we've traded with before. We moved up for Jameson with the Vikings. So, you could see a situation where you might be willing to trade with them. And then we trade with the Packers and too when we moved up and got Brian Branch. So Brad Holmes has traded within the division. So um, that's a possibility if we, one of these guys that are on this list we could move up. Minnesota only has 4 picks this year. So they're a team that, if the Lions want to trade up, they may want picks, right? Because they're like, we only have 4 picks this year. They may want to accumulate picks. So even if it's not with the Lions, they may be looking to trade back just to get extra capital this year. So they picked 24, 97, 139, and 187. So a first, a third, a fifth, and a sixth. That's all they got. Um, and let's see, their draft targets are similar to what they have for the Packers. So they got Kenneth Grant, Jade Barron, Derek Harmon, uh, what's it, Nick Imanawari. I think I said that right.
Yeah,
I
it's
put
pretty
it
close.
phonetically on there. I think I'm pretty close. Gray Zabel's listed for them.
He put it phonetically and he still almost screwed it up.
I know. As someone that pronounces drug names all the time, you think that I would be very good at this, but I'm not. Maxwell Harrison, Malachi Starks, and this cornerback I wasn't really. Siobhan Revel, junior cornerback out of East Carolina, was also in their target range. So I think I'm with you. Same thing. I just don't want them to pick like Kenneth Gratz on their list or Jade Barron, someone like that. I want to target in my first round pick.
Yeah, that's my main thing is just having somebody there. You're like, oh man, make me hate them even worse if they sweep in and steal one of those guys.
Yeah, I'm just hoping they
Siobhan
screw the
Revel,
whole thing up.
I've not seen in the first round mocks at all, so that's kind
Yeah.
of an interesting, one there. But the Vikings probably feel like they're still built to win right now, even with McCarthy, second year. So most mocks I've seen have them taking safety or cornerback, so it's probably where they're going to go here.
Yeah, I don't see them doing because they signed some their inside defensive tackle help. I'm hoping they avoid Grant for that reason. Um, they might go offensive line. I know they signed a couple guys, but I think they're going to need some good backups there. They dealt with an injury last year. I don't want them seeing Malachi Starks because I like Starks as a player, so I don't want them to have a good safety back there. They got to replace Bynum, who left to go to the Colts. So I don't know. we'll see. I bet that they want to trade back if they can, though.
I mean, maybe. They're only 4 picks. I don't know how much, they trade back and get an extra. They go from 4 to 5 or 4 to 6, and one of them's a really late pick. That would be depth pieces, though. It wouldn't really be starter material for them. So,
Right. I mean, they have a pretty good roster, though. I
right.
mean,
So
and
it's going to
they've
be
spent a
interesting.
lot in free agency this year too. But I think they could be hurting themselves too. They spent a lot in free agency. You're not going to have a lot of cheap rookies because you don't have a lot of picks. That's not a good combination to be in. And that's another reason I could see the Lions trading back. And, if we can get, 2 or 3 eventual starters out of this draft, we're going to need that to be able to re-sign our guys. This draft and the next draft are going to be, all the drafts are important, but if we want to keep those 4 guys that, from the 23 draft, first and second rounders, we're gonna need to really hit on these draft picks.
Right. Because we got to get cheaper elsewhere.
Yes,
So,
exactly. So, all right, man. We hit the draft pretty good. Next week we may be doing some mock stuff. We'll run a mock simulator. We'll kind of look at some picks. So that'll be good. And then we'll see. We might be able to talk to you from the draft at Ford Field. We're still trying to work out the logistics on that. That may or may not happen. But be aware that, hit the notification on YouTube. If we go live, we might be going live from right in Ford Field, try to give you a view inside the stadium if that works out. But anything else you want to add, Jacob?
no, man. I'm ready for this draft.
I know it's coming up quick. I talked to you at work today. I was like, it's next week. Like it's kind of just snuck up on me. Like I was felt like I had a whole nother week to prepare, but we don't. It's next week.
Moving along quickly.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of changes and a lot of visits and a lot of stuff, a week from now, too.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of smoke stuff will happen, and you won't be able to trust anything you hear next week.
I don't trust most stuff I hear from you anyway.
Not just from me. It's from the Twitterverse or whatever. So, all right, man. For Jacob, I'm Jason. Thanks for everybody listening. Hit the like, hit subscribe. Appreciate everyone that's stuck around with us we're almost a year into doing this. So appreciate everyone has been with us along the ride
Definitely.
here. So, all right, let's go Lions. 9-1.
Right.
You
Yeah.
have